The first flare came on a Wednesday afternoon, burning through the magnetosphere like a hot needle through silk. It collapsed satellite relays, cooked memory boards, and bled across the world's wire-thin nerves until every luminous screen twitched, guttered, and died. People noticed first the silence in their earbuds, then the blank icons where photographs should have been, then the echoing loss that spread like frost through global servers. Entire museums of digital art, sensorial sculptures, chromatic animations, centuries of scanned canvases were reduced to magnetic mulch. An era that had believed itself immune to fire and time found itself smelling of ash all the same. The second flare, 2 days later, sealed the fate of the backups. Battery-powered drives, Faraday-grounded archives, deep-vaulted repositories under Arctic ice. None were spared the sun's wild heartbeat. Data degenerated into a drizzle of meaningless bits. Curators wept over inert tablets. Collectors stared at mirror-polished frames that reflected only their own confusion. Somewhere, an auction house clerk realized the receipts were gone too. That ownership itself had been erased, as though art and price and provenance alike were butterflies scorched mid-slight. On the western edge of the city, in a peeling brick studio above a disused fish cannery, Mara Espinosa listened to neighbors banging on radiators and to the wind whipping off the bay. Her own apartment was dark, but she did not mind darkness. She used daylight sparsely, the amber bulbs of late evening more sympathetic to her process. What alarmed her was the sudden blankness inside her mind's gallery. She could still see the shape of a Kandinsky swirl, but its deep aquamarine no longer tasted of coriander. The soft-edged pink that always fizzed on her tongue like champagne was flat now, a flavorless bubble. Colors for her were histories of sensation. If the sensations bled away, could she still call up the hue? Mara, 31, was known in small avant-garde circles as the synesthetic archivist. She possessed a neurological cross-wiring so vivid it had become navigational. Blue belonged to eucalyptus, green to wet brass, yellow to split mango with chili powder. She had trained herself, over years of patient synesthesia diaries, to translate thousands of pigment variations into taste-smell signatures. When she visited digital galleries, immersive rooms where images floated on walls and ceilings, she chewed cinnamon gum or sipped licorice tea to peg a chroma in place. She was, friends claimed, the safest server imaginable, an analog cloud of flesh and neurons. Now that the sun had turned brutal historian, she was also, perhaps, the only server left. She descended to the street with a ragged scarf around her neck, the air smelling faintly of ozone and burned circuitry. Word of mouth traveled faster than emergency radio. By nightfall, a loose coalition of artists, curators, and panic collectors had congregated at the old Central Library, the one building in town whose thick limestone walls had shrugged off the flares. When Mara arrived, someone thrust a flashlight into her hands and escorted her past rows of silent card catalogs to the marbled reading room, where a war room tapestry of candles and clipboards lit anxious faces. Sagaro Espinosa, said a bespectacled man she recognized from New Art Quarterly. They say you can paint from memory, that you remember each brush stroke through your palette. I remember color, she corrected, if the flavor's intact. He slid a tablet toward her, useless glass, then shifted to a printed index. We've prioritized 20 works. Digital on the originals, Rose Window Collapse, Algorithm of the Sphinx, Chen's Rainstorm Without Water. We have high-resolution thumbnails in a journal, but they're monochrome now, pure grayscale, ghosts. His voice cracked. Can you bring them back? Mara touched the pages. The grayscale images were maps without legend, all value, no tone. Maybe, she said, but you'd better have pigment I can taste. A scavenger team was dispatched to art supply warehouses, to school closets, to abandoned theater wings. They returned carting boxes of oil sticks, pigment jars, linseed, desktop presses. Mara tested ultramarine against the tip of her tongue, a cool rush like stainless steel left overnight in dew. Yes, that was the right family. Vermilion smelled of cracked pepper and stone dust. Good, but she was searching for stricter correspondences, the microscopic shades endemic to high-definition screens, colors named in hex codes rather than earth minerals. She feared many had no earthly analog. Night bled into dawn, and under the vaulted skylight, Mara primed a canvas the size of a mattress. She inhaled the turpentine vapor until edges of memory sharpened. The first painting on the list, Rose Window Collapse by I. Gill, famous for its cathedral geometry rendered in near-infrared ribbons. The original had shimmered crimson heat within sapphire glass, sudden arcs of ultraviolet that never appeared the same twice. Yet, underlying it all was the steady hum of clover honey. Mara uncapped quinacridone magenta, thinned it, and the studio bloomed with honey notes so distinct she nearly cried. She laid down broad petals of color, letting her tongue navigate where her eyes faltered. Observers circled at a distance, noting each stroke, photographing with antique film cameras borrowed from grandfather's closets. They whispered, "She's not copying a picture, she's retrieving it." By noon, the skeleton of the piece stood upright, pulsing, and the reading room felt warmer, as though a stained glass window truly glowed beyond them. But Mara's palate was tiring. As she mixed cobalt teal, the taste no longer surged minty bright. It was like recalling a perfume after its wearer has left the room, an outline only. She pushed through, but the last violet she needed refused to appear. She imagined biting the inside of her cheek for a metallic tang. Yet even that could not anchor the shade, so she improvised, overglazing with a diluted dioxazine purple until she smelled distant campfire smoke, a fair compromise. When she stepped back, archivists applauded. Children who had never seen the original gasped. Some purists frowned, sensing the violet skew. Mara ignored them. "Photograph it," she said. "Describe it in ink 1,000 ways if you must. I don't know how long it will hold." That night, she dreamed of gray tides rolling over a field of easels. In the morning, she discovered she had indeed lost Violet entirely. When she looked at a violet sweater someone wore, she tasted only cotton, no lavender sugar. A neurological switch had flipped. Something radiation, exhaustion, was unspooling her inner code. Still, demands flooded in. Governments wanted propaganda murals re-envisioned. Fashion houses begged for color palettes. Families clutched at her sleeves, describing wedding photos gone static. She refused money. Currency felt brittle. Instead, she bargained for analog goods. Raw pigments from disused mines. Jars of preserved saffron for its golden scent. A battered phonograph whose needles she enjoyed watching skate. She demanded quiet hours, too, to sit on the library roof, eyes shut, naming what colors remained intact. There were fewer each dusk. 2 weeks after the second flare, a third pulse rode the aurora, weaker but enough to panic humanity further. Rumors said a fourth lay behind it like a hidden ace. Scientists could not promise safety. Under that uncertainty, Mara began the Great Commission, Chen Zuying's Rainstorm Without Water. A 360-degree digital installation once mounted in Beijing. The piece had immersed visitors in a torrent of color particles, simulating rain that never physically landed, yet soaked viewers in synesthetic sensation. Chen had programmed 4.3 million color points. Mara had one cylindrical hall, 20-foot canvases, and dwindling faculties. She requested assistance, children preferably whose brains were still plastic, whom she might teach a shared language of sensation. 7 volunteers arrived, ages 9 to 15, clutching notebooks. She gave each a set of scents: cardamom, sea salt, copper wire, lime zest. Smell. Taste. Close your eyes. The shade that swims up, hold it. Give it a word. That will be your anchor when the screens are dark. For days the hall became a chemistry kitchen. Spritzes of perfume, bowls of tamarind pulp, packets of edible gold leaf. The children laughed, gagged, scribbled. Some discovered partial synesthesia. Others faked it out of enthusiasm. Mara did not care as long as the memory stuck. Together they blocked in the storm. Splashes of phthalo green that crackled like soda pop, skeins of silver graphite dusting that whistled like wind across glass bottles. Mid-cess, reporters forced access, determined to film what they now called the last painter. Their halogen rigs flooded the space with harsh light. One bulb detonated, startling everyone. In the confusion, Mara accidentally inhaled a mouthful of graphite particles. Metallic nausea surged. For a wild instant, she saw only white, a color that, to her, tasted of snowmelt and raw almond. Then the taste cut out, and with it, white itself. Blankness. Absolute. She fled to the library basement, coughing. The children followed, afraid. When she could speak, Mara said, "We have to hurry. I'm losing them faster than I can teach you." A teenage girl named Imara knelt beside her. "If you lose them all, what happens?" Her voice trembled. "Then everything is monochrome," Mara whispered. "Not just the world, my mind too. And if it's nowhere, it may as well never have been." From that afternoon forward, the project became a relay race. Mara mixed hues she barely perceived, explaining them verbally while an assistant confirmed visual accuracy. She would say, "There should be a rim of turquoise around the Prussian blot turquoise. Is mint chewing gum on a winter walk?" If her taster child, Orion, chewed mint and felt snow spark behind his eyes, they adjusted until he nodded. It was translation built on faith. Slowly, rainstorm without water took form, its canvases forming a circle that visitors entered as though stepping inside a gemstone. From outside it looked chaotic. From the center, the panels aligned so that rivulets of paint seemed to cascade in continuity. No digital projector was needed. Viewers, rotating slowly, reported the uncanny urge to wipe droplets from their arms. Some emerged crying. The day they declared the piece complete, Mara could taste only 3 pigments: a thin ochre like toast crust, a walnut bitter umber, and a faint citrine fizz. Her doctor, a neurologist working by lamplight, found nothing structurally wrong, but suspected cumulative neural fatigue aggravated by stress. "Rest," he advised. "Avoid overstimulation. Your senses may recalibrate." But rest was impossible. Requests arrived by the crate. A small coastal nation's flag colors had vanished from every record. They begged her to reconstruct the exact crimson of their independence. A grieving father carried a printout of his son's final VR painting, now gray, and asked Mara to find the laugh embedded in its yellows. She tried, but with only 3 secure tastes she was mixing in darkness. She turned to the children. "This is yours now. Trust your anchors." Together, they tackled the flag. Imara swore the correct crimson smelled like dragon fruit under sunlight. Orion insisted it tasted of chipped ice from a street vendor. They bickered, blended, argued until Mara forced them to layer both pigments, a base of dragon fruit, a shimmer of chipped ice. The diplomats signed off, satisfied. But it was no longer Mara's art. It was communal memory, assembled like a patchwork quilt, each square stitched by different hands, flavors overlapping. At last, the 4th solar flare lit the skies, auroras boiling even over the equator. Power grids fell again, candles doubled in price. During city-wide Blackout 3, Mara climbed to the library roof, blankets around her shoulders. The stars were ferocious, dominating a sky made ancient. She tried to pronounce their colors. Deneb had been a razor-clean blue with the taste of watermelon rind, Betelgeuse a peppery maroon. Now, both were mute white diamonds. She closed her eyes, grieving privately in swells too wide for language. Footsteps approached Nathan, the bespectacled curator, bearing a thermos and a rolled canvas. "You should come inside. Temperature's dropping." Mara shook her head. "I'm trying to keep one shade alive. Just one." He sat, careful. "I brought this." He unrolled a small canvas. Her first student exercise at age 12. A sunflower field. Real sunflower yellow, earthy warm, the smell of summer dust. The pigment had not faded. It was cadmium, notoriously permanent. She inhaled, desperate. For an instant, a spark. Toasted cornmeal, beeswax, childhood. Then, Nothing. The wire had been cut. Tears blurred her vision. Nathan offered the thermos hot chocolate, but even that tasted of boiled water. Her senses were collapsing into grayscale universality. Salt, sweet, bitter, sour, umami. Colors were more nuanced symphonies than the orchestra had packed up. The city council announced evacuation the following week. Additional flares were projected, some strong enough to compromise infrastructure indefinitely. People packed analog essentials, printed books, photo albums, vinyl records. The children begged Mara to flee with them to inland shelters, but she refused. "I have one more piece," she said. "A goodbye painting. After that, whatever goes blank, goes." She chose the grand reading room, where she had resurrected the first window. One final canvas, 20 feet wide, backed by cedar. Instead of paints, she assembled powders of pure pigment on a low table. Lapis lazuli, malachite, carmine, orphan historic colors with tangible heft. She had no taste signatures left, only intellectual knowledge of what they once had been. Opening her notebook, she wrote a single sentence. "Color is memory, is love." Then she dipped a dry brush into ultramarine dust and swirled it across the linen in an arc. She could not see its blueness, could not taste it, but she knew the molecular shape: sulfur, aluminum, silica. Next came vermilion, a toxic brilliance she applied with gloved fingers in bold discs. She worked methodically, layers overlapping, fractal veils suggesting wings, waves, coastlines, references to everything she'd tried to save. Word spread. People gathered quietly along balconies, candles in their hands. Some hummed, low, a makeshift lullaby. The children passed bowls, inviting spectators to breathe in pigment scents: chalky mineral, earthy spice, distant thunderstorm. Without screens or projectors, sensation became participatory. They were smelling the idea of blue, tasting the possibility of red. Mara painted 3 days without rest. On the final morning, a thin dawn crawled through skylights, revealing a composition like none she had ever conceived. Not a recreation, but a topographical map of extinction and remembrance. Despite lacking internal color sense, she had balanced values perfectly. Observers said the canvas seemed to pulse, as if light came from its marrow. She stepped back, dizzy. The room smelled of cedar and citrus solvent. She swallowed and tasted nothing. Her palette knife slipped. She steadied herself on a column. "It's done," she announced, though she could not judge success. Nathan approached with a handheld mirror. "Look." She saw a face, chalked pale, lips flecked by pigment dust. Behind her reflection loomed the painting, a cosmos of swirling blues, bleeding oranges, and moss greens, converging into a central aperture of raw linen, shaped like an eye. Through that unpainted iris the wall glowed candle gold. It was as if the work acknowledged absence, admitted its own incompleteness, and turned it into focus. The crowd erupted in soft applause. Some knelt, others simply stared. A child whispered, "It sounds like the ocean." For Mara there was only silence, a silence so vast it might have been peace. The children, she knew, would carry forward fragments, smell words, taste stories. The discipline of looking for hidden senses. Maybe they would weave new languages, new technologies, immune to solar wrath. Analog could always begin again. That night she locked the reading room, securing the canvases in crates lined with lead foil, not for radiation, but for reverence. She left a note taped to the cedar door. "To whoever survives, this is what we felt. Not data, but presence." The evacuation trains shrieked their farewells. She joined the last coach, sketchbook under her arm, its pages blank. Outside the window the city lights were out, but the sky blazed with aurora, curtains of green and violet no camera could capture. She watched, unsensing, yet oddly content. Beyond the glass, color lived its own life, indifferent to human catalogs. Inside her mind the palette had gone dark, but she imagined she could still hear a distant chime each time the aurora shifted. If synesthesia was memory, perhaps memory could invert. sound becoming color after all color was gone. She closed her eyes and listened harder. Somewhere beneath the rail car's clatter, a faint note rang, the flavor of promise, tasteless, invisible, but undeniably bright.